their health care, and their health care costs are going to go up as well.
Well, we'll argue on that one. Senator Sanders.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Mr. Besson, for being here. Help me out here. My understanding is the Trump administration has, I think, 13 billionaires in office right now, leading government agencies. Is that about right, do you think?
I have no idea, Senator.
I think that's what the number is. Do you think it's a coincidence, given the large number of billionaires in the Trump administration, that this particular piece of legislation would provide $235 billion in tax breaks to the top 0.2% by expanding the exemptions in the estate tax?
Senator, I will tell you that when the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act passed, my tax rate went up.
Well, I don't know your exact situation, but I can tell you. Tell me about how many people do you think are in the top 0.2%?
Sorry?
Number of people in the top 0.2% who would benefit from this particular $235 billion tax break?
Well, the top, I know the top 10% is
right.
now paying 7%.
That's not the question. My question is, why do you think at a time of unprecedented income and wealth inequality, when people like yourself economically have never, ever had it so good, why do you think it's a good idea to cut Medicaid for low-income and working-class people by $700 billion to give $235 billion in tax breaks to the very, very, very richest people in this country, perhaps a few hundred families? Please justify that and tell me about that.
Well, Senator.
What's up, Patriots? Welcome back to America First. I'm your host, and if you're new here, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, because we're bringing you the truth that the mainstream media won't tell you. Today, we're breaking down this absolutely ridiculous display from Bernie Sanders in what appears to be a congressional hearing about tax policy. And let me tell you, the economic illiteracy on display here is staggering.
Senator, I don't know, but the Democrats had the trifecta, and there was no tax increase or wealth tax on billionaires. You choose.
I'm not talking about a tax.
You chose not to do that.
Mr. Besson, I am not talking about a wealth tax. Explain. A few hundred of the wealthiest families in this country, $235 billion tax break. Explain to the American people why you think that's a great idea.
I think that this will increase small businesses substantially. That most small businesses, they are...
Has zero to do, come on, you're smarter than that. This is the top 0.2%. This is not a mom and pop store. These are multi-billionaires, and the savings go to their kids after they pass away. This is nothing more than a gift to billionaires in this country.
Well, sir, that's just not correct, because the top 10% paid a bigger share of taxes after TCJA.
I'm talking about one provision in this. I don't want to argue with you about taxes in general. One provision, few hundred families, $235 billion in tax breaks. You can't justify that because morally it is totally unjustifiable. Let me ask you another question. If you guys want to cut $1 trillion in Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act, the estimate from CBO, I believe, is that over 15 million people lose their health insurance. Yale University and the University of Pennsylvania estimated that when you throw that many low-income and working-class people off of health care, some 50,000 people a year will die. Tell me why you think it's a good idea to give tax breaks to billionaires and allow 50,000 low-income and working-class people to die unnecessarily?
Senator, first of all, that's overstated by 5.1 million. That is not attributed to this bill. It is simply
It's a combination. That's true.
No. You all had a scheduled expiration of Obamacare subsidies, and you did not extend that when you were in charge. 5.1 million, 1.4 million illegal aliens on Medicaid.
All right, look,
and there are work requirements. And our goal is to get more money to children and mothers.
Really? Your goal is to get more money to children, and working people. Really, come on. Do you know how many people, and I was surprised to hear this, I don't know if you know it or not, how many people lose their jobs every year, quit, get fired or whatever. Do you have any idea?
Well, there's something called the quits rate, and so when the job market is strong,
I understand.
more people quit.
But yeah, I was surprised that I just researched this. I don't know. Do you happen to know?
I don't know the number.
I was surprised. I mean, would it be shocking to you? It was to me. 20 million people leave their jobs a year. Doesn't shock you, right? It's a big labor force, right?
Yep.
So somebody leaves the job, maybe they move, maybe something happens in their lives, right? We have a lot of transition in the labor market, correct?
Maybe they get a better job.
Right, exactly. Maybe they do. Or maybe they have to stay home, their wife gets sick, whatever, we don't know. But 20 million people lose their jobs in a given year, leave their jobs in a given year. Are those people lazy? What happens when I leave my job and maybe I have to move to another state to take care of my ill mother? And I desperately need Medicaid. Am I too lazy now to be able to get Medicaid?
I think that's a mischaracterization of the work requirement.
Really? Well, I'm not quite so sure it is.
So right off the bat, Sanders starts with this talking point about billionaires in the Trump administration. Look, folks, I don't care how much money someone has if they're competent, and they're putting America first. Would you rather have successful business people who understand how the economy actually works, or career politicians who have never created a job in their lives? The fact that successful Americans are willing to serve in government should be celebrated, not demonized. Now let's talk about this estate tax issue that Sanders is so worked up about. He's calling it a gift to billionaires. But here's what he's not telling you. The estate tax is fundamentally un-American. Think about this logically. You work your entire life. You pay taxes on every dollar you earn. You build a business. You create jobs. And then when you die, the government comes in and takes another massive chunk before you can pass it to your children. That's double taxation. Plain and simple. Sanders keeps throwing around this $235 billion figure like it's taxpayer money being handed out. But that's not how tax cuts work. This is money that families earn through their own hard work and innovation. When you reduce the estate tax, you're not giving anyone money. You're letting them keep more of what they already earned. There's a fundamental difference that Sanders either doesn't understand or is deliberately misrepresenting. The witness made an excellent point that Sanders completely ignored. Small businesses, which are the backbone of our economy, often get hit by estate taxes. When a small business owner dies, their family sometimes has to sell the business just to pay the tax bill. That destroys jobs and breaks up family enterprises that took generations to build. The estate tax is a job killer, period. Now Sanders pivots to this emotional appeal about Medicaid cuts and people dying. This is classic leftist fear-mongering. First of all, work requirements for able-bodied adults on Medicaid just make sense. If you can work, you should work. That's not controversial. That's basic common sense. We want a safety net for people who truly need it, not a hammock for people who could be contributing to society. The witness correctly pointed out that many of the people Sanders is worried about losing coverage are illegal immigrants. Since when did it become the American taxpayer's responsibility to provide free health care to people who aren't even supposed to be in this country? We have veterans sleeping on the streets and American families struggling to afford health care, but Sanders wants us to worry about providing Medicaid to illegal aliens. Sanders brought up the statistic about 20 million people leaving their jobs annually, try and make it sound like these are all desperate people who need government assistance. But as the witness pointed out, in a strong economy, people leave jobs to take better jobs. They leave to start businesses. They leave because they have options. That's called economic mobility, and it's a good thing. The example Sanders used about someone leaving work to care for a sick family member is actually a perfect illustration of why we need targeted, temporary assistance programs, not permanent welfare dependency. If someone has to leave work temporarily for a legitimate family emergency, there should be short-term help available. But that doesn't mean we should abandon work requirements entirely. Here's what Sanders fundamentally doesn't understand about economics. When you let successful people keep more of their money, they don't stuff it under a mattress. They invest it. They start new businesses. They expand existing businesses. They create jobs. Every dollar that stays in the private sector rather than going to government creates economic activity and opportunity. The estate tax doesn't just hurt billionaires. It hurts family farms, small manufacturers, and any family business that has built up assets over time. These are exactly the kind of multi-generational enterprises that made America great. When government policy makes it harder to pass these businesses down to the next generation, we're undermining one of the core principles that built this country. Sanders keeps talking about inequality, but he never mentions the most important statistic. Economic mobility in America is still the highest in the world when you account for the massive opportunities available here. The question isn't whether some people have more money than others. The question is whether everyone has the opportunity to improve their situation through hard work and smart decisions. The real inequality in this country isn't between rich and poor. It's between the productive class that creates wealth and jobs, and the political class that redistributes wealth and creates dependency. Sanders has been in government for decades, and what has he actually produced? What jobs has he created? What businesses has he built? The answer is none, but he wants to lecture successful Americans about fairness. What we're seeing in this hearing is the fundamental difference between conservative and liberal worldview. Conservatives believe in creating opportunity through economic growth and letting people keep what they earn. Liberals believe in creating dependency through government programs and taking money from successful people to buy votes from unsuccessful people. The Trump administration understood that the best social program is a job. When you cut taxes and reduce regulations, businesses expand and hire more workers. When you make it easier for families to build wealth and pass it down to their children, you create generational prosperity. That's the American dream in action. Sanders can throw around all the emotional statistics he wants, but the facts are clear. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act led to record low unemployment, rising wages, and economic growth that benefited all Americans. Meanwhile, every socialist policy Sanders has ever supported has led to economic stagnation and dependency. The choice is clear, patriots. We can either build an economy based on opportunity, innovation, and reward for hard work, or we can build an economy based on government dependency and punishment for success. I know which America I want to live in, and I know which America our founders intended. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to like this video and subscribe to America First. We're going to keep bringing you the truth about what's really happening in Washington, and we're going to keep fighting for the principles that made this country great. Thanks for watching, and remember, America First. Always.